The time is now 3:01 p.m. I will go ahead and call to order the regular meeting for the month of July 2024, the Cobb County Board of Elections. And with that, we will start the meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. All those willing and able, please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So I note that there are a number of people here today, a few more than normal. Welcome. Some are familiar faces while others are not. I do feel it appropriate to remind everyone that this is a formal meeting of the Board of Elections. Outbursts won't be tolerated. It's just not how we are going to communicate. It's just not, and this is nothing new. I see people looking around a little bit taken aback by it. This is nothing new. I've shared this type of comment or statement before. So again, just reminding everyone that if we could conduct ourselves with decorum and professionalism, it would absolutely be appreciated. It's actually necessary. I note that there are 9 individuals for public comment, but first we will take a motion to approve the agenda. Has everyone had an opportunity to review the meeting agenda? I will entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Bruning. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded to approve the meeting agenda. All of those in favor? The motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Now on to public comment. Again, this is not uncommon either. We have a number of items that we need to get to today. I do note that there are 9 individuals that have signed up for public comment. This has happened in the past. While we note that the time period for public comment is 5 minutes, we also reserve the right to modify that time period that's allotted to each person that is speaking. And so today, each speaker will be permitted to speak for 3 minutes. And with that, we will start with Mr. Eugene Williams.
My name is Eugene Williams, and I'd like to make a few comments after I watched the last Cobb County Board of Elections meeting. I forwarded to this board a list of invalid voter registrations this past April, requesting that you all look into these registrations because every one of these folks have moved out of state and they've also registered to vote in another state. And when electors take this type of action, they lose their residency on both counts. And they also lose their right to be listed on the Cobb County voter rolls. And when I sent my list to you, I hope and I expected you all to have some kind of an interest to look into these registrations. And boy, was I mistaken. Instead, you did absolutely nothing, and you told me exactly that in your email. You made it perfectly clear that you would not consider even lifting a finger to look into these registrations unless I went forward and made a formal challenge. To do this, well, this do-nothing approach of yours is a complete breach of your duties to the citizens of this county. And then after I filed these challenges, I see you now want to charge me for the expense to look into these invalid voter registrations, which in reality is your job to begin with. And honestly, this is just an overt act on your part to attempt to suppress citizens from coming forward with these type of challenges. And it's just like they used to do in the Jim Crow era, where they had people they didn't want to participate in the voting process. They put a poll tax on them. It was wrong then, it's wrong now, and it's exactly like that. And you also stated in your meeting that you will not allow any of my challenges to be heard for the folks that are listed in the inactive status, which is the vast majority of my challenges. And for the record, there is nothing in Georgia Code 21-2229 which gives you all the authority to do that. There's nothing in there. You're simply acting like an unlawful board when you take that position. And this board has some serious issues. Number one, you don't fulfill your lawful duties to examine the qualifications of the folks on our voter rolls. And then number two, you extend yourself authority that you do not possess to try to limit the number of lawful challenges. And then number three, you try to thwart the will of the legislature by attempting to suppress citizen engagement by wanting to charge a poll tax on citizens for initiating these challenges. You all just obviously hate transparency. You hate it with a passion. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Next up is Leroy Imkin.
Here I am from Cobb County. My comments will be in connection with citizens' First Amendment rights to criticize our local, state, and federal government during periods of public comment as described by the following two court cases. First, New York Times Company versus Sullivan, United States Supreme Court case. Perhaps the most fundamental of all First Amendment's free speech principles is that individuals have a free speech right to criticize the government. In the New York Times versus Sullivan case, United States Supreme Court Justice William Brennan famously wrote of a, quote, profound national commitment to the principle that debate on public issues should be uninhibited, robust, and wide open, and that it may well include vehement, caustic, and sometimes unpleasantly sharp attacks on government and public officials, whom you are. Second, the Mama Bears lawsuit filed in the United States District Court for the Northern District of Georgia. A parental rights group in Forsyth County called the Mama Bears won a federal First Amendment rights lawsuit against the Forsyth County School District. Included in a court order, senior United States District Judge Richard Story ordered the following, quote, the court also permanently enjoins the district, its officers, school board members, agents, servants, employees, and all persons in active concert or participation with them who receive actual notice of this injunction from enforcing the respectfulness requirement to you, Tory, the restriction on personally addressing board members, all of you, including the superintendent, or any restriction on profane, uncivil, or abusive remarks contained in the current public participation policy or any substantially comparable provision in a future Forsyth County policy. And that, quote, this injunction is binding on the district, its Board of Education, their successors, agents, attorneys, and assigns. You're all assigns. I have the constitutional right of addressing each one of you. Tory, you by name. You, Debbie. You, Stephen. You, Tory. I said that already. You, Stacy. You, Jennifer. I can even criticize Jennifer Musbecker, my constitutional right to criticize her for not saying the Pledge of Allegiance and disrespecting all those men and women who died in wars to protect our freedoms and our Constitution. She refuses to say the Pledge of Allegiance. I have the constitutional right of addressing each one of you by name, even if it is vehement, caustic, and sometimes unpleasantly sharp attacks on public officials. That's my constitutional right, and the attorney knows that. He learned that, and anybody else who has a degree in law knows that. They've all studied the New York Times versus Sullivan law case. Tory, I would recommend you don't make any comments about what we can and cannot say when addressing you. I understand you're concerned about disrespectful comments. We're all adults. We know how to deal with our comments. I don't mean to be so loud. That's just the way I talk.
That's
but
no
please,
problem,
but please
sir.
don't tell us what we can and cannot say or that we have to be respectful. We don't have to be.
Well, it's obvious that you don't intend to be. Thank you, sir. Your time is concluded.
Well, I was respectful.
Elaine, I believe it's Murphy.
Thank you for my time. And let me just say to you, Jennifer, I'm disgusted by the fact that you could not even say our Pledge of Allegiance. What are you doing on this board? Disgusted. Okay. 30 years ago, I moved here, lived here for 30 years. About 15 years ago, I started caring about voter situations and voter integrity. And I started getting involved. I poll watch. I know some of you. Some of you know me. But today, I'm here to talk about clean election rolls. Because I go to our main office. I know things that's going on. I have friends involved in things. It is your responsibility to keep our election rolls clean. Yours, not us. I'm appalled that you want to charge us for bringing stuff to you. That is appalling. Oh my God. What is your budget? What did you spend last year? Do you have any money left? I'd like to see that. Because I have a friend who does this for a living in Tennessee, and she told me all about this. So I know what I'm talking about, and if I don't, I can ask her. So I'd like to see your budget. And the fact that you want to charge us for bringing stuff to you, this is your duty. This is what you just signed up for. Do you know that you can set up a database that will track this stuff for you and send stuff out? Did you know that? I got somebody that could do it for you. And since we're talking about it, right here, someone who is listed living in my house that I bought and paid for. He is sitting in the Cobb County Jail because he is a stalker. And he is on my house as a registered voter in this county. So can I take him off? Do I have that right? I look every day online to see if he's still in there because he hasn't went to court yet, which is another wonderful thing with our Cobb system. So yeah, can I take him off? What do I need to do that? He doesn't live in my house and hasn't lived there since early 2021. So I guess technically he's a resident of Cobb County since he's living in the jail. And he hasn't been in my house since April of 2021. But we pulled this today, and he's listed as a voter, registered voter in my house. That's all I've got for you.
Thank you, Ms. Murphy. Hugh Norris.
Good afternoon, Board. Hugh Norris speaking. I'm not a happy camper. Actually, that might be my most understated thought of the year. I am furious, and I am furious with this board. There are many reasons why I'm furious. Here are two. We all continue, or we will continue, voting on electronic voting machines during the upcoming voting season. Those of us who are honest and informed believe the 2020 election was stolen, and we have an illegitimate occupant sitting in the White House. Multiple proofs have come forward suggesting that the electronic voting systems played a part in that election theft. And incredulously, if that's pronounced properly, the next presidential election will be conducted on the electronic machines with outdated software. But maybe it shouldn't be surprising that this board goes along with the stuff that slides or rolls down the hill from higher authorities. I certainly don't know where the loyalties of this board lie. After all, we have Member Mossberger not willing to demonstrate allegiance to our republic and flag. Certainly on a personal level, she may do that on a personal level. But as she holds an important board management position regarding the counting of the votes, how sacred is that? The citizens must be informed why Member Mossberger will not stand and recite the pledge. And Board Chairman Silas is complicit, as she won't require an explanation from Mossberger. And Cobb Commission Chairman Cupid is also complicit, as she has neither required Mossberger provide an explanation to the citizens or replace Mossberger. I say that because Board Member Mossberger is Cupid's appointee to this board. This should clearly indicate to you why I'm furious with the majority of this board. I'll be very curious how the state elections board meeting goes tomorrow. 8:30 a.m., I believe it starts. Will they start undoing the chains of their capture? Question mark. Will they properly address the Fulton County corruption? Question mark. Thank you, Board.
Thank you, Mr. Norris. Christine Rossman.
Hello, Chair and Board. Christine Rosman. I'd like to start off with your mission statement for the Board of Elections. That is, the mission of the Cobb County Elections Department is to register citizens of Cobb County to vote, to ensure that elections are free, impartial, fair, accurate, convenient, and accessible to all voters, to encourage voter participation, to provide excellent customer service to voters, candidates, and the media, and to help the public understand and follow all laws and rules and regulations. What I find funny is that I don't think anything in here really says about being good stewards of the monies that you have that are given to you by the board or the taxpayers for, like, what, 3 or 4 weeks of election time, and then having redos of elections and runoffs. And so we have like 6 weeks of elections, and you have precincts, you have early voting, and it's really easy because you can walk in and you can be the only voter there in an hour. Like, there's nobody else there. And so that's, like, to me, like, I come from the private sector where if you were like, you'd be out of business, frankly, because you do something with spending so much money and then you don't even do the job right. I mean, you have a citizen, Eugene, that is like saying, hey, voter fraud is a problem across the country. I'm going to help you out. I'm going to, like, here I can show you. Here I can show you. Here are some duplicates. Here are some, and you're like, no thanks. Seriously? I mean, that's really arrogant. And it's and the thing is that you all are public servants. You're here to serve us. That is your job, and you don't have it down right. I mean, I seriously think you should find somebody that works at Chick-fil-A and get them to run the systems in here, because it would be like clockwork. Because they don't do cold French fries and they don't do half-baked chicken. It's consistent. And you are disenfranchising us, the rest of the voters, when people are always saying, who's my commissioner? Because they still don't know, because it's still unclear. They don't even know what freaking precinct they're in. And you know what? Seriously, guess what that is? That's election interference. You are interfering with my vote and with the people that are taxpayers here, because what's going to happen when all those illegal immigrants start going and registering to vote? That's going to be a fun time. I'm sorry, Tate, and maybe you're texting somebody.
Your
So
time
anyway.
is expired, Ms. Rossman.
No, it isn't.
Yes, it is.
No, it isn't. It wasn't, okay? Not on mine. Now it is.
I started at 3 minutes and it's expired.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you very much. Bob Maynard.
Bob Maynard, Cobb County. Let me just list some points of salient points of law that impact this board's decision to attempt to overlook the possible invalid voter list that was presented to it by an elector. And I'm squeezing this in because you've changed the rules here. NVRA, regular updates. The state must regularly update their voter registration list to remove ineligible voters due to death, change of address, or disqualifying reasons. At the very least, the challenged voters, active or not active, should be run against the NCOA, which I understand has been done. And in addition to that, the non-active voters can be run against the AAMVA, which is the motor vehicle, the joint motor vehicle association that trades information back and forth from state to state that tells you if you have a license in another state, so you can't get two licenses in different states. So what does Section 8 of the NVRA require the states to do? Well, first of all, it mandates certain action by the states concerning administration of voter registration election for federal officials. But these rules have been adopted by the state because of the mixture of federal and non-federal races. But one of the salient points in there is the rules for removing the names from voter registration lists. Let's talk about Georgia Law 21229, the challenge of the applicant for registration. Item A is very clear. There shall not be a limit on the number of persons whose qualifications such electors may challenge. And then to F, failure to comply with the provisions of this code section by the Board of Registrars shall subject the such board to sanctions by the State Election Board. So the suggestion that the person presenting the challenge should pay for the research to clean the voter rolls is completely inappropriate. The 24th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution protects my right to vote. Any ineligible vote cast dilutes my vote and therefore runs afoul of the 24th Amendment of the Constitution. Making an elector pay for the duty and requirements that both the NVRA and Georgia 21 mandate to the state and the registrars clearly represents a poll tax. In conclusion, you are a body that we must count on to ensure free and fair elections in Cobb County. You must stand for us. We rely on you to do the right thing. The irony is you are not an elected board. It is commonly accepted that regular politicians sometimes vote to counter to their constituents through acts of conscience, perhaps better information, or occasionally some nefarious reasons on some issues. We have a remedy for that. We vote them out of office. We can't do that with you. We count on the issue of integrity and strict adherence to the law for your commission. That is paramount. You have to stand up for us and do the right thing. In the past, we've seen how you
Mr. Maynard.
compromise your integrity, kowtowing to your pals on the county commission with such issues as the home rule map.
Thank you,
Please
Mr.
set those loyalties
Maynard.
aside
We
and do the right thing.
Thank you for your time, sir.
And off the record, can you please not change the rules at the last minute? I had a 4-minute talk. I had to squeeze in 3 minutes. At
I
least
under-
put that out on the agenda.
And it's generally on, this. I know I've revised this a number of times, and as much that it says that it's for 5 minutes. However, given the number of individuals that, and for those of you that have been here before, this is nothing new. So let's just make sure this gets updated on a go-forward basis. Yeah, it is here. It says the board reserves, so when you all signed up, there is a statement here that says it's actually 5 minutes. In addition to that, it says that the board reserves the right, and it's been there for a while. Thank you for pointing that out, Ms. Brooks. We will go on. John Southall.
Hello, my name is John Southall. I've been in Cobb County for almost 40 years. I respect the Board of Elections here. They are representing we citizens here in Cobb County, and they are basically appointed by those that were elected by Cobb County citizens. So indirectly, they are elected into their positions. But it's been pointed out that there's only a few days in the year that we have elections, and there's a budget for that. And to be able to be efficient in using those funds, there's got to be a process. And the process deals with the people that move and register in another state. Well, the stopgap for any hanky-panky is that when a citizen comes in and wants to vote, they've got to fill out the proper forms. They've got to provide ID, photo ID, and make sure that they are registered at that time. So there are a lot of checks and balances involved, and trying to demand that when someone leaves the state and registers somewhere else, that their name immediately be deleted from the system by the board here is unfair within the budget restrictions that they have. And I think that there should be some consideration for the respect for your county taxes that actually run this system. So if you'd be a little more respectful to the board, a little more considerate of your tax money that funds this election system. And I do appreciate there was one person that said that they had been a poll watcher. That means that you're definitely involved in the process and you're interested in how it works. There's also poll workers that you can get involved in, and coming to these meetings, expressing your concern for a free and fair election is wonderful. It's part of America and part of democracy, and hopefully we can get the democracy to continue in its existence. When you look at when you look at the way the system has been run for the last 40 years countrywide, it's easy to get depressed about how things are going countrywide. Cobb County is one of 159 election systems in the county, in the state of Georgia, and all 159 results goes up to Secretary Brad Raffensperger. And Raffensperger provides the rules and regulations and the system to make sure
Mr. Southall, I apologize for interrupting you. Your time has expired.
Thank you very much. Appreciate
Thank you.
it.
Is it Perrin? Cheda? Cheda? Yes, sir.
Hello, board. I'm just going to make a few comments. One, thank you for doing this. We should not limit the number of challenges to active voter rolls, so we're to active voters only, so that we're not unnecessarily removing inactive voters' right to vote. Those inactive voters are already being handled through the Secretary of State process, which gives inactive voters several years to reactivate before being removed. Second point, we should be cognizant of the election staff's resources needed to process the challenges of thousands of voters at any time. The staff has to investigate and mail each challenged voter in the midst of doing their full-time jobs. And so if we're going to do that, we probably need more specific policies that outline exactly what that process would be. And let me also take a point of personal. The 2020 election was the most secure election in history. And you can laugh all you want, you can do everything that you want, but that's the truth. And you know why? Because how many times did your Fuhrer go to court and get denied? Over 60 times. And wah about the standing issue. You lost in court. You're mad because your boy lost in 2020. He's going to lose in 2024. And it doesn't matter. And all you guys are not concerned about election interference, because if you were, you would be concerned about trying to invalidate an entire state, which he did, recorded on the phone with Raffensperger, which is under indictment for. So give me a break.
Thank you, Mr. Chetta. And finally, Mrs. Reardon, Pamela Reardon.
Thank you for taking me last minute, Pamela Reardon. Okay, I think I have to address that last comment. Yeah, I was out there 2020. I challenged 31,000 voters in this county in December who were on the voter rolls, shouldn't have been on the voter rolls because of the NCOA data. Guess what? Brad Raffensperger took them off 3 months, 2 months later. So I was right. I got vilified by the left-wing crackpots who came to my house, wrote articles about me, whatever. Yeah, you want to call me an election denier? I know the truth, sir. Right. And also, there are actually still many discs, memory discs, ballot images, cast votes missing in Cobb County. that they cannot verify the 2020 results. I'm just saying, we don't even have to go to Fulton County to look at that. But anyways, I actually came here to talk about the challenges because I have a little bit of experience in that. So the NVRA clearly states, right, that the states and the counties have to do voter registration maintenance. The Secretary of State has stated, and I can send you the email if you want, from Blake Evans, that the counties are responsible for voter roll maintenance. So you cannot charge a poll tax. No, that is absolutely wrong, okay? Because you need to do your job. The elections office needs to do their job. I'm sorry, I'll put more work on y'all. But it's easy. And like the previous person said, if you don't have a search and destroy, like if you can't search a spreadsheet, come on, there are tools out there for doing that, right? There are. We can easily do this. And if a citizen comes up and says, oh, I'm going to help you do your job, you should be, yes, help me. Help me do my job. Because that data is 100%, maybe 99.9% correct. Because the second, beside the NCOA data that Eugene has provided, is the proof that that person has moved and registered, changed their homestead exemption to another state. In the law, it says outside the jurisdiction. That means out of Cobb County, y'all. I'm going to translate. That's what that means. Okay? So I can't remember what else I was going to say. How much time do I have? 5 seconds. I'll wrap up and say challenges are a must. They have to come up. Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Reardon. That concludes public comment. We'll move on to the next item on the agenda, that being the approval of our meeting minutes. I know they were circulated today. Has everyone had an opportunity to review the June 18th election night meeting minutes as well as the June 24th regular meeting and certification meeting minutes? Okay. Are there any, I found a couple of things, but they're non-substantive, just kind of Scrivener errors. I didn't have time to redline them. I'll send them to you, but they don't change the substance of the minutes. Does anyone have any proposed revisions or comments with respect to the meeting minutes? Okay. If there are no proposed revisions or comments, I will entertain a motion to approve the meeting minutes.
Move we approve.
Thank you, Mr. Bruning. Is there a second? It's been moved and properly seconded to approve our June 18th election night meeting minutes as well as the June 24th regular meeting certification meeting minutes. All those in favor? The approval of the meeting minutes passes unanimously. Thank you. Moving on to the next item on the agenda, into new business. Ms. Fall, I believe you are going to talk with us about the proposed AIP schedule for November.
So prior to the meeting, I sent the board the draft AIP flyer as well as a map and some supporting documentation. At this time, I'm asking that we just open this up for discussion instead of voting. The reason being is that we are looking at the possibility of relocating our Northeast AIP site from Tim D. Lee Senior Center. As I know the board is aware, the seniors that use that senior center have circulated a petition to ask us to no longer use that facility for early voting. Our first couple of places we went to shot us down because they're already booked up, but it looks like that we have maybe some promising options with either Chattahoochee Technical College, the Mountain View campus, which is just across the street, or even possibly the Mountain View Regional Library, depending on the size of that library and the space they could give us for those 3 weeks. So I asked that we look at this and, of course, ask questions. We can look at the numbers, and then hopefully by our next meeting, then I'll have a firm answer on if we're able to relocate Tim D. Lee or not. Okay. So the first item that CP will bring up is our flyer. So this lists the early voting sites as well as the proposed hours. We are looking at adding an additional site from what we have done earlier this year. So that is that Fair Oaks Recreation Center, which when we look at the map in a second, you'll see that that is number 12 on the map, which kind of fills in a hole that we did have in kind of that central Cobb area. So that was the purpose there. So we'll still have the same Dropbox locations. We're also proposing the limited Sunday voting sites as well. So that's those 5 sites, limited from noon to 7 p.m. We'll look at our numbers from this year in just a moment, but that's kind of our initial pass there, since a lot of the voters who have come to speak in favor of Sunday voting are speaking in terms of the after-church crowd, that we would love to give our workers the opportunity to attend church that morning as well if they would like to prior to coming to work. So that's why we have that 12 noon start instead of starting at 7 a.m. as we do all the other days of early voting. So the next item in your packet is the map. And so you can see that that kind of shows the dispersion of all of our AIP sites that are proposed. The stars denote the drop boxes, so also really tried to focus on spreading those out around the county as well. And so we have, like I said, number 12 kind of right there, south central Cobb a little bit, kind of fills in that hole that we have, get so much traffic at our office, we think will help alleviate some of that as well. And then we're going to bring up some slides. So the first slide is just looking, it was shared in the last board meeting, are different numbers that we've seen so far. So the orange bar is the March PPP, the green is the May primary, and then the pinkish bar is that June runoff, which again, we only did a limited number of sites there. So you can see that our northeast, which is that Tim D. Lee, is a really popular center. So I definitely understand that takes a lot of parking, a lot of people coming in and out. So there are definitely concerns from, like I said, those seniors that utilize that facility regularly. So this kind of shows our busiest locations, as well as kind of that consistency that we saw between both March and May. And then, of course, those lower numbers in June, as we only did the 1 week. And then the next slide is just a graph on showing kind of some different day samplings for March and May. Since we only did that 1 week in June, I didn't include it in this as I thought it was not as telling. Just to show that we are really consistently doing some of the same large numbers and small numbers on the same days. So just giving that context for you as we look at these numbers. And then if you want to go back to the flyer, the other items in the board's packet include projections from board member Bruning, kind of some rough estimates that we have, which again is kind of up in the air since 2020 is not a barometer of how we'll vote, as well as the breakdown of locations from November 2022. You'll see that as well. You'll see the projected payroll per satellite. It says primary June 2024, but it's the same calculator that we plugged in the proposed November hours. For that, you'll also see the equipment breakdown to show that we're going to try to maximize the equipment we're utilizing at these facilities, because in order to get the wait times down, the only way to do that is to increase points of service. So that's more poll books where people can check in, and more voting machines where voters can actually vote. So that's the goal there, is to maximize based on the space, based on the electricity allotments with those facilities, what we can and can't do. So you'll see we max out our numbers there. And then we have an additional hours breakdown in terms of past elections and what we're projected at currently. With that, I'll turn it over to the board with questions.
Thank you, Mrs. Fall. Do you have questions, Mr. Bruni?
Hey, looking at this summary of the proposed equipment, unfortunately, nobody totaled these, and I'm not fast enough to add them up. Do you have the total number of BMDs or poll pads?
I don't have that in front of me. I know we were talking about the scanner numbers earlier, because it's likely that we'll have to do the split scanners as well that we had to do in May, where we're having to split the precincts. And so in that case, we would give a third scanner for the heavier side of the alphabet, as we saw that become an issue with traffic. But I don't have the totals. I apologize for not including that.
I
Total
guess,
in BMDs, I apologize for interrupting you, is 178. Total BMDs are.
where are you seeing that?
I just did it,
Oh,
added it.
okay. So what is it for the
No, I don't.
November list?
Oh, sorry. Go ahead and answer your, ask your questions. I'll get you the numbers.
Oh, no, I forgot.
Sorry.
I guess the scanners don't really represent a bottleneck for people passing through the locations. The BMDs and the poll pads are the bigger bottleneck, at least from my observation.
Right.
So that's why I'm more concerned about them than I am about the number of scanners. And I see some improvements or some increases, but most of them are about the same.
Right.
And it really worries me because I think that the turnout in November is going to be huge. And the comparison to PPP and the primary this year is really not applicable.
Right.
And the better comparison is the 2022 midterm election, where there was strong competition statewide, and we had 181,000 votes at AIP. That's a huge increase, and I'm very worried that the proposal doesn't really address how we're going to get that many people through the process and without creating heavy lines, big lines. And I understand the need to look at Tim Lee, and definitely Tim Lee is one of our biggest turnout locations. We have got to have a comparable facility or bigger.
Absolutely.
And or find another location in that area. But again, I'm just concerned that we're going to run into a bottleneck without a bigger increase in BMDs and poll pads. I don't know if there's any way to remedy that or to increase those. I know at the main location, that's where I worked, there wasn't. I mean, there are only so many slots. On the other hand, hopefully we won't have having to ask voters which ballot they wanted and those kind of questions. And this should be a much more streamlined voting process as opposed to all those questions that were on the ballot that people actually spent a lot of time reading those. So I'm just raising the issue. And I think another problem we have is that we have so big a turnout on the Thursday and Friday, the last days of the advanced voting. And I would just ask, are there any extra sites or locations that maybe could just be open that last week? I know it's difficult from a scheduling standpoint. It's got all kinds of negatives, but I'm just very worried that we're going to be swamped by the turnout this fall. So.
Understood. I think as far as the numbers in this, and I'll get with Mr. Dietrich and Ms. Miller to confirm tomorrow, but I believe this is pretty much our max that we have to allot. We could pull from Election Day, but we're also, these are, my understanding is the max that room could possibly hold. So not necessarily space. Like when you go to our AIP room, we could fit space-wise 3 more quads in there, right? But we don't have that electricity to be able to do that. So I'll get with them and make sure that this is our max that we can do with how many machines we have allotted for AIP, because we only have a certain number of machines total. And so now that the law has changed, it doesn't require us to give 1 BMD per 250 voters. That may give us more flexibility that we previously did not have as required by law. So we can look back at these numbers and see what our options are.
If I can, I know you have a question. I just want to note, perhaps it might be helpful based upon Mr. Bruning's comment with regard to results or the equipment used in 2022 being a better comparator, not to create an administrative burden on anyone, but perhaps recreating this, and instead of having March 2024 PPP equipment numbers, maybe if we can update this to have the November 2022 equipment numbers.
I'll see what I can find on our
Okay.
numbers docs.
I'm done, Debbie, go ahead.
Okay. If memory serves, we've done very well since 2020 on wait times. So what basis are you using to come up that we need an additional scanner, because that's the
So the additional
roadblock?
scanner comes from the bottleneck we saw in May, which was at the scanner. So in May, we kind of had a compounding of two issues. The length of the ballot caused a hold at the BMDs, especially at our smaller early voting locations where we only had a certain number of equipment. But then the scanner, because the ballot was so long and we have so many precincts and so many ballot styles, in May we had almost 2,500 ballot styles. This precinct scanners had to be split for AIP, where I believe it was A through N was one and M through Z or A through M. And so when you look at where we're at, when you're at this Smyrna location, almost all of those voters vote at a Smyrna precinct. So that side of the scanner that would take those Smyrna ballots had a long line, whereas the other side didn't. So the idea is, and I believe I had a chart in a previous board meeting, and I can circulate it amongst y'all so you can have that again, where we were seeing scanners that were doing double the other scanner because it was that Smyrna or the Marietta or the Kennesaw, those types of breakdowns between the area and the voters that are voting there. So the idea of adding that second scanner to the heavier side of the alphabet break is that we won't have those long lines at the scanner, because we had people that were waiting 10, 15 minutes just to scan their ballot because it was taking the scanners 30 to 45 seconds to scan the ballot.
But you won't have that long of a scanner for the general.
It still will have to be split.
Long of a ballot.
So that'll help alleviate the issue at the BMD, but it doesn't alleviate the issue at the scanner. We still have to split the scanners.
I'm kind of with Stephen on, I don't think the scanner is the backup. I don't think that's where we increase wait times. So I'm,
Well, I was just going to say, can't we, knowing who votes at a particular precinct,
change the
divide-
alphabet.
yeah,
No,
divide it.
change
we
the.
can't do that. That's how the election is programmed. So the scanners, once that's set, that's all scanners for AIP are programmed the exact same way. It's not like Kennesaw's location is programmed differently than our office. They're all programmed the exact same way because they receive all 2,500 ballot styles. So they all have to be programmed. Now, granted, we won't have that many ballot styles, again, because there's not partisan ballots. But we'll have a nonpartisan ballot, we'll have the full ballot, and we'll have a Fed-only ballot. So that alone is 3 times 148. So there's still, that's why they have to create the split. And I believe because of the referendum, we're looking, I think, at a 13-inch or a 15-inch ballot.
The other thing I want to inquire about is Tim Lee deciding in the middle of an election cycle, a very important one, to not allow us back in there. I think that is absolutely wrong.
Let me clarify, the center is not kicking us out. They are willing to work with us. These are the constituents that utilize Tim D. Lee have circulated a petition that was given to the county manager. The senior center is not kicking us out. They just were like, hey, we want to let you know this is happening so we can recognize the
So
difficult
how many
position we're
people
in.
signed that petition?
I'm not sure, I did not receive a copy, but I believe it was well over 100.
Out of how many voters?
I understand.
Okay,
I
mean,
understand.
now is not the time to change what is one of our most popular precincts.
I understand. And if that's the board's opinion, I'm happy to
adamantly
move forward with
opposed to that and happy to voice that concern to our county manager, but I am adamantly opposed to changing Tim Lee in this election cycle.
Understood.
Okay.
Absolutely.
I would agree with Debbie on that.
Likewise, I know Director Fall and I did have a conversation earlier today as we prepared for the meeting. I did note, based upon that conversation, that she note that possible relocation, because what I thought would not be prudent is to send this out, or not send it out, but to provide it to us and us not have that conversation. obviously it's visible to the public as well.
If we had a couple thousand people on that petition, I might
Understood.
listen, but 100 people because we interrupt their square dancing, well, that is what upset them last time, by the way.
Okay.
I was watching it. It was actually a lot of fun. But it is to disrupt in the middle of an election cycle, not a good idea.
I understand. And perhaps there is an opportunity, Director Fall, to perhaps, I hesitate almost to say this, but to go and meet with those constituents, obviously in consultation with county leadership to the extent that that petition was directed to them and was not provided to this board or for that matter to you, such that we can let them know that we have heard them, because we're not in communication with them. The information was provided to the county manager, but perhaps having a conversation with Dr. McMorris to address their concerns and let them know that we are willing to and have begun the process of trying to find something, a replacement polling location. But to Debbie's point, Ms. Fisher's point, it wouldn't be prudent to do that now.
Understood.
Maybe they could borrow a room at the library to do the square dancing, because it was awkward. They put them in the lobby, and it was very tight, and maybe they could find another location, at least for the purpose of this election.
Understood. And if the board wanted to move forward on the proposal as presented, that's your ability to do that, and we can stop searching for an additional site. So we're just trying to, we ask a lot of our county partners, and I know earlier someone mentioned 6 weeks. If we have a December runoff, we'll have 9 weeks of voting this year. That's 9 weeks of revenue, 9 weeks of serving their citizens. And we met recently, and I think part of it is, my job is to serve the citizens in the capacity of voting, right? That's why I'm the elections director. But it's the Parks and Rec director's job to serve his constituents in the capacity of Parks and Rec. That's why he's a Parks and Rec director and not an election director. So I'm trying to make sure that we keep those relationships positive to where it doesn't feel like a burden, and that we do hear them and we take into consideration what the people using their facilities every day are saying. And in a year like this, it's kind of a sorry, can't do anything, and that's okay too. But I'm just trying to make sure that we're doing our part to keep those relationships in a positive column.
And rightfully so.
I agree with keeping it positive, but it isn't a surprise. We use the same facilities pretty consistently. And so as far as the loss of revenue, not necessarily, because you're comparing election to election, same time frame for all practical purposes. So maybe they can deal with this issue more effectively in the request for their budget, considering it's all these people out here and us who pay the taxes that run those facilities. Just saying.
Thank you.
My preference would be to tell them it's a little bit too close to the major election to make a change this year, but we will, if we can get past this election, we can start looking for alternatives after 2024.
Absolutely. It looks like we do have some viable options with just a little bit more notice in the area across the street. So not even that far. So I think we could definitely get there next year if we have any specials that cover this area, or potentially by the gubernatorial for sure.
Right, and that's just the same point with regard to meeting with them. Sending an email is one thing, at least in my opinion. Sending an email or sending a message through someone else, but your face, having a conversation with them. We're happy to obviously attend and support as well. We do hear them. I don't believe that we want to appear to be dismissive to the concerns, but we do have a major election coming up. I have a couple of points and questions I wanted to raise, but did want to open it up for any other comments or conversation. If there are none, Mr. Bruning made mention of perhaps having an additional location for 1 week, and I believe, Mr. Bruning, we did that in 2022. My recollection was that we used Jim Miller. Exactly, and that's what I have here. So perhaps that's you and the team can look into Jim Miller.
Jim Miller is not an option for us. Jim Miller nor the convention center are not an option. They've been booked for years.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah, that's why I did check, because it's a large facility.
Perhaps there's another large facility to the extent it would only be used for 1 week, as opposed to the full 3 weeks based upon Mr. Bruning's suggestion. The other point I want to raise here, and again, I know that I do not believe that we're voting today, unless someone is so inclined to make a motion. I think this was presented for conversation. I note that on Sundays, the hours are 12 to 7. I looked, and I know in 2022, we had the one Sunday, and it was from, I want to say 12 to 5. 12 to 5. So I wanted to inquire about the rationale on that.
It was really just to provide the consistency of ending at 7 p.m. The staff would gladly only be there from 12 to 5 if that is what the board desires. Some other neighboring counties are 7 to 7 every single day, Sunday through Saturday. And so we were hoping that if we said noon to 7, that we could get it instead of being 7 to 7 both Sundays. So the staff would gladly support a 12 to 5 Sunday voting hour.
I think if you look at the turnouts that we've had since we started with the Sunday turnout, I think 12 to 5 was sufficient for the number of people who actually come.
I would agree.
And so if we can give the election workers a break anywhere, that's where we can. Plus Sunday for a lot of people is a family day, including election workers. So I agree, Tori. I think 7 might not be necessary.
Okay. Yeah.
We added one additional Sunday.
Right,
So,
whereas last time we only had the one Sunday.
yeah, so
Okay.
I did want to note, I forgot to mention at the top, I apologize. It's not an error that this starts on Tuesday, October 15th, instead of Monday, the 14th. That Monday is Columbus Day, or Indigenous Peoples Day, so that's a state holiday. It's not a county holiday, but by law, we have to delay early voting for another day because it's a state holiday. So that's why it starts on a Tuesday, so I apologize, forgot to highlight that.
Those were the couple of points that I wanted to make, just following on with what Mr. Bruning said, and then recognizing the Sunday hours in 2022 versus what we're proposing now, or potentially proposing. So if there aren't any additional questions or comments, I believe, yes, sir.
I would just say that I'm okay with 5 o'clock stopping on Sunday because people are working AIP or working all week, and then that is tough. And there was very little turnout in the 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock time frame, particularly on Sunday. Now, during the week, there will be a lot of turnout. So I'm okay with that revision. And I agree with Debbie that we really need to keep Tim Lee as is and not change, even though it sounds like you found good potential alternatives. This election is going to be too large and too intense to have people saying, well, where is it? I always come here. And so, yes, we can look next year, but let's not change this time. Given that, is there any reason we shouldn't go ahead and adopt this plan?
I think one more thing I'd like to note on that. There is a change from previous here. The west location did change from West Cobb Senior Center to Boots Ward Rec, if you're familiar with that area. I believe they share a parking lot. That's just because the room we were in West Cobb was very small and could not support the volume. So Boots Ward is letting us use their larger space there. So
Right.
that is a note, but same parking lot. So I don't think we'll have the confusion that I do think we would have if we changed Tim Lee. I do agree with that. If the board would like to amend to 12 to 5 on Sundays, I'm not sure if you do want me to look into a large facility for that final week, if you want to hold until that, or you could add it on. We can add on, we just can't take away once we've approved.
I'd be okay with voting now and adding on when we can.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't believe it's necessary to vote now, but I defer to the majority. it's just ideal, these are publicly available documents, and to the extent that we vote on one and then it, somehow this gets out and that, but again, I'm fine.
Well, let's wait till the next meeting.
Right, we're not up against any deadlines with regard to state
Right.
requirements.
Right,
so-
correct. Yeah, I'll go ahead and let these locations know that they're locked in
Mm-hmm.
and that Timley is, I'll schedule a town hall with the Timley seniors, and maybe they'll teach me to square dance, and then I'll begin working with the county to try to find a suitable large location for maybe that last week. I'll get with the team and see where in the county we maybe want to think about doing that, in terms of where our turnout is high, and bring some hopeful, strong proposals to y'all next month.
Great.
Okay. If there's nothing else, just let us know when the town hall with the Timley seniors gets
Absolutely.
scheduled, so those of us that can participate can join. Was there anything else, Director Paul?
That's all in regard to this item.
Okay. All right. Let's move on to the next item on the agenda, and that is the board, it's noted as board retreat prep. And to be quite honest, so we previously announced that the board would host or hold a retreat in light of where we are with regard to policies. That's why I was kind of a bit hesitant as to whether to take these two items together. But obviously, at our last meeting, we were speaking of the board policy on voter challenges. It's back on the agenda today. And just for full transparency, two proposed policies. One with regard to 230 challenges, one with regard to 229 challenges, has been circulated among the board, Director Fall, and our council. I don't believe we are intending to take a vote. I know Ms. Fisher raised concerns about taking a vote in light of the timing of the receipt of the policy, but I also note that we engaged in a fairly hefty amount of conversation at the last board meeting, so I thought it appropriate for this item to remain on the agenda until we ultimately adopt the policies. That being said, I circulated a proposed agenda for the upcoming board retreat. You all should have that. I know that I've also previously inquired about topics and things that you believe we should address during the retreat. But of course, the policies or bylaws, the bylaws for the board are extremely dated. I believe they date back to 1985 when the board was formed. And Mr. White, I believe that there have been maybe one or two amendments, but they've not been updated in a number of years. Okay, so that's one of the items. The board policies, or I'm sorry, the voter challenge policies are something that, again, we can engage in a conversation today to the extent that anyone has comments that they want to share. And then I also provided you with a document that is a part of the board book. It's this table that purports to be policies and procedural changes to election processes. And I just think we need to update this as well. Some of these things date back to 1999 and so forth. So I think we just need to undertake a comprehensive review of the policies and make any updates as necessary, as we are not the same election office, nor are we the same country and county that we were with regard to technology that we were in the mid to late 90s. So I don't know whether anyone has anything further that they believe is necessary to add to the agenda. I note that the board retreat will be held on August the 3rd. And I believe, Director Fall, you were going to inquire about the opportunity to have some type of live streaming to the extent that the public is obviously welcome, but to the extent that they can't physically make it there.
Yes, we should be able to set up a live stream. I'm going to work with IS and comms on getting that set up. It shouldn't be an issue for us to get a webcam up there and get us streaming.
Okay, and that's a stream. That's not for interaction. It's just a stream.
Correct.
Okay. Did anyone else have any comments, concerns? And obviously, you know, we have a number of weeks prior to when the retreat will take place. But again, I wanted to bring it to everyone's attention.
I'm good with these topics.
Okay. If there is nothing further, well, and should that change, I mean, if there are other items that you believe that we need to take up, obviously just send them, working closely with Tate and Ms. Brooks to finalize the agenda for the retreat, as well as, you know, obviously at the last meeting, we voted to hold a special called meeting on that same day that will be held at 9 a.m., and then the retreat will follow thereon at the conclusion of the special called meeting. Yes, sir.
I would just ask that the current bylaws
Be provided.
be provided
Yes.
early,
Yes, I will send them to you.
and that we also hear what proposed changes are,
Yeah,
that you have in mind.
certainly. And it's not just what I have in mind. I
Oh, no.
mean, obviously, I'm taking the lead on this. I do believe that there's an opportunity to improve the governance of this organization or of this board. I think that's just the lawyer in me. I think that also speaks to my preference for civility and things of the like. But all that being said, Mr. White did provide us with an electronic copy. He dug it out and found one because admittedly, there was an electronic copy. And so it's been converted to Word. And I'm sorry, when I say an electronic copy, it was just a PDF. So we had to convert it to Word, update it, such that it is capable of being redlined so that you can see the proposed revisions. But yes, we'll work to get that out soon, as well as an electronic copy of this table of board policies and procedures. Unless there's anything else, we can move on to the old business, that being the board policy on voter challenges. As I just shared, obviously, those were shared with the committee, with the board earlier today. Some of that is on me, and as much that I had an issue getting that emailed, I need to have a conversation with IS about the struggles and the woes I have with my Cobb County email. I also want to thank Board Member Mossbacher for the heavy lifting that she has done, with some support from me, but the primary heavy lifting that she's done in pulling the proposed policies, again, on Section 229 and Section 230 challenges. So if you have, and it was provided in a Word document, so if you have, whatever's the easiest. Obviously, if you want to redline it, if you want to send comments back, just in an email, all of the comments will be aggregated into one document such that we're all working from the same version, and that will be circulated for us all to review. And, but obviously, if anyone has comments, questions, or even, I see a couple of red question marks there, so I couldn't help but say, if you have comments or questions, definitely speak up now, or for that matter, we can take it up at a later time.
From what I could tell, the content was not new based on what we discussed last month. It's
No.
more of just documenting what we had already passed last month.
Yeah, it's a matter of documenting the two policies that we adopted, but also it's all incorporating the law into the document. So to the extent that there were 8 or 9 pages each, a fair amount of that is just restatement of the law. And it's our intention, and I've not had an opportunity to speak to Director Fall about it, but it would be our intention, as Board Member Mossbacher suggested, that we would make these policies available online, and so that the public can see what the policies and the procedures are with regard to 229 challenges, or for that matter, 230 challenges. And I think that may alleviate some of the concerns. And you know, I think it's an appropriate time, because we're talking about this, to, and it's not often that I address public comment, but individuals are suggesting that, you know, things shouldn't be submitted formally. Well, clearly the legislature has a process that they have set out, and it's codified in Georgia law, and I don't believe it's outside the purview of this board to request that any person that is eligible to challenge electors in Cobb County lean into that process as adopted by the legislature. So that is the reason that, to the extent that a list of challenges was submitted to this board in April on the eve of an election, mind you, that had federal races on it. I think certain information is not consistently and completely being provided. So that's another reason why I'm addressing that particular comment. I mean, April the 20th, that was a month or so prior to the May 18th election, and obviously there were federal election or federal races on the ballot, so we were not in a position based upon federal law to remove electors from our voter rolls. But all that being said, again, if we have this as provided by the General Assembly, this board, and I would imagine all other boards across the state of Georgia are going to abide by them, and I don't believe to ask that of an elector that's making a challenge is outside the purview of this board. Long-winded way of answering your question, yes, that's correct.
So in my opinion, I read this, it looks like what we already talked about last month, so I don't have any concerns, but I am wondering if Mr. White could share his legal perspective of, is this a good representation of what we agreed on last month?
Well, I think the two things that were discussed last month were the issues. I don't think, one thing that's in there that I think wasn't formally adopted was the issue of the costs.
Right, and that's why it's
that's in there,
proposed.
and that would need to be discussed. That was just discussed last month. It wasn't adopted, but the issues last month were talking about status challenges, and then also consideration of people that are on the inactive list. And so those are in there. Honestly, I got them this morning too, and just since we're talking about transparency and people want, I was out of town all last week, so I appreciate Ms. Mosbacher and Ms. Silas. You wanted to have something to discuss this meeting. I said, well, if you guys want to put it together, that's fine. But so I've looked at these this morning. Once I've seen them, I don't really want to give a full legal opinion on it at this point. What I would say to your suggestion, I agree. I think the public should be able to see them and consider them, but I would sort of like to take a legal pin to it
Of
and
course.
say, let's line this up. But I can look at these and see these are taken from other policies. Some of this is from a policy that I had drafted, a year or two ago, and then just in terms of procedures, and then some of it's from other counties that have adopted policies. So these are all things that have been considered by boards and their attorneys and things like that. And so I don't see anything just that jumps out at me immediately and says, well, you definitely can't consider that policy, but there's a little cleanup I would want to do. But I for sure think that, let's get it into a state where we feel comfortable that it's something we, want to receive some feedback from the public on, and then we can, my suggestion, I don't want to invite any extra work, but to the extent we do have a challenge hearing coming up in August, there could be other things that happen in court cases between now and then, but if there's a need to have a special meeting between now and August, it might not be a bad idea to get something in shape and then have a special call to adopt a final policy before that. That's just a suggestion, but I know everybody's busy in July and it's hard to do, but that's, and it may be something where if we have to, if we're waiting on a court ruling that everybody's waiting on, that we might have a reason to have a special meeting, or you could decide to have a special meeting just to discuss these policies. But that was a suggestion I was going to make, is that, I would like a chance to just go through, and most of it's just formatting and things like that. But there's nothing that I'd look at and say, no, that's not consistent with Georgia law or with policies that other counties have adopted.
Okay. No, and I would agree with you about the prospect of having a special called meeting prior to our currently scheduled August 3rd special called meeting. Our meeting for this month is happening relatively early in the month, and so we've got a fair amount of time, 4 weeks, until our special called meeting. So as everyone works through the policies, and again, to the extent you have proposed revisions, suggestions, give a phone call. I'll work closely, as I generally do, with Mr. White in coming up with a proposed draft, combining and aggregating all of the proposed revisions and comments, and get it out to everyone as promptly as possible in advance of any special called meeting, so that we can all align on the policies. So, not sure if anyone has any additional comments or concerns about that. Yes, sir.
I have one question. There's, on page 6 of 8, where,
Which one, 229
I'm
or
sorry,
230?
229.
Okay.
There is a item C. It says, after a hearing, the board is unable to determine the voter's residence. The board will place the voter in a challenged status. And
That's in the code, and I think that might be more related to 230 challenges, because that's where,
2-3.
pardon?
I think that's in 230.
Yeah, 230, yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
think it's in 229.
Right.
Yeah, there's probably some overlap from.
Yeah,
just
there is
things were
some
cut and paste,
overlap.
And so that's the kind of thing I was talking about. It's like, I want to, I'm
Right.
going to go through and clean that up.
Because that was referenced in that bulletin that came from the Secretary of State. So I think we just need to go through and just be certain that we align it. But there is a bulletin, and I will provide it.
It's
Thought
on the bottom, it's listed on the bottom of that.
yeah, no, but those bulletins are not easily findable on the Secretary of State's website, but I did find them, because the 13th, October 13th bulletin actually relates to an October 11th bulletin, which provides foundation. So I found both of them. I will email them to everyone.
Okay.
That'd be helpful.
Was there anything else, Mr. Bruning, you wanted to bring to our attention?
No, we can talk about it at the retreat.
Okay, sounds good. All right, next up, if there's nothing further with regard to the proposed policies, or at least our plan, and moving forward with the proposed policies on voter challenges, well, welcome back. I know you had a great break after a very busy 6 to 7 months with us. But do you have any additional information you want to share as part of your director update?
I just have a few things. So last week while I was on vacation, if you were paying attention to the news, you'll see that there was spoofed text messages that were going out to individuals in Cobb purporting to be Cobb County elections, with a link to update voter registration or absentee by mail application in some instances. They spoofed our number, our main office, which does not have the capability to send out text messages. But the link was real. It linked to the Secretary of State's website. It was not a fraudulent link. So if you know anyone that did submit information on that link, it was real. It wasn't a fraudulent link, so they don't need to worry about any type of identity theft in that way. We reported the incident, of course, to the Secretary of State, and they're working it up on their end. Today, I was contacted by an attorney with the FCC Enforcement Bureau to get more details, so I'll be working with her to give her all of the evidence and all the information that has been provided to us by voters. If any other voters or residents of Cobb County have screenshots of those texts that they would like to provide, please send those to us so we can include that in the file for the FCC attorney. And let's see, I have included in your board packet an updated org chart. You'll see that there's some vacancies. We've had a lot of internal movement, some promotions, some seasonal people coming onto us in a permanent capacity, which has been great. But that, of course, leaves holes. So if you see a red vacancy, that position is either currently in the process of being filled, offers are being made this week, or it's already posted, or it's about to be posted. So our goal is to get fully staffed in terms of permanent staff by mid-August. That way we have our team locked in before we have our week of training, and we can get everyone on the same page heading into November. So that's the goal there. You'll also notice if you have previous org charts, we're really working on decreasing our reliance on temporary workers, contracted temporary workers, and moving more into working with people that are either on the election payroll or our seasonals. Also working on recognizing those seasonals that hold an important part of the puzzle for us in terms of the work we do, moving them to a permanent capacity. So transitioning them to permanent part-time to ensure that that knowledge is not lost amongst the seasonal fluctuations that we have. We always expect a large number of retirements after a presidential election with poll workers or seasonal workers. They always say, I'll do one more presidential and then I'm done. So we always expect that. So we're kind of gearing up for that natural retirement movement that we'll see. I also wanted to highlight I'll be out of town a few days next week. I'm attending the Partnership for Large Election Jurisdictions Conference. So it's the 3 largest election jurisdictions in every state. They get together and we'll be just learning and having briefings from Department of Homeland Security, from different secretaries of states, talking a lot about AI, safety, security. So I look forward to bringing back all that knowledge and sharing it with the board and what resources were provided to us. I'll be sure to pass along all of those great presentations that we'll have. On that same topic, as I've spoken with the board about previously, both permanent staff and poll workers have expressed a concern for their safety for this November election. As the board knows, we recently had an active shooter drill or an active shooter training with our permanent staff in our office, as they had not had one since they moved to the new building off of Whitlock into 995 Roswell. And then we'll be having an actual drill in our week of training in August. An active shooter drill, as well as fire drills and other drills of that sort. But that is a real concern for the staff and for poll workers. And so we're looking at what we can do within our extremely limited budget that doesn't provide us really any flexibility. And so we're looking at contracting a security officer to be at our office when we're open 8 to 5 for the months of October, November, and December. This is what Fulton and DeKalb both currently do at their facilities. And speaking with them, even at DeKalb, they have to go through a metal detector. Fulton, they have to check in before they are allowed into the main lobby. So there's a lot of processes in place in other counties that are at the same level of concern that people here in Cobb have in terms of our workers, that we're looking at hopefully giving them some type of sense of safety and what we can provide within our budget. So I'll have more information to y'all on that once I have a formal proposal on what that will look like for us. And then last but certainly not least, we are looking forward to National Voter Registration Day, which is September 17th. So we're beginning planning stages of that. So we'll have lots of events. We'll be working with community partners and getting engaged with them, making sure they're trained and prepared to do their own voter registration drives. And then we'll be doing events throughout the community as well. So once I have a formal calendar, once everything is confirmed, I'll share that with the board as well. And it'll, of course, be on our website for the public to know what we got going on. Okay, that's it.
Go ahead. No, with regard to the partners that you made reference to, so is this, I know other counties have a deputy registrar training program. Is that what you're referring to, making certain that they're in a position, any partners are in a position to conduct registration drives?
Correct.
Okay,
Yeah, that way
great.
they are aware
That's
that
great.
they can't just go out and hand out voter registration forms,
Okay.
and that they need to complete training before they do that.
Okay, excellent. Did anyone have anything further for Director Fall?
Thank you.
If there's nothing else, the next item on the agenda is my update. My update is really just for us to be mindful and looking ahead for preparation of the, or for the retreat. Mr. White, is there a need? I believe folks on the board would probably believe that there is a need to move into executive session for the purposes of discussing pending litigation, given the fact that we've not received any kind of ruling.
Sure, I can give you an update, well, a little bit of an update and on other legal issues we've been discussing the potential litigation. So I'd say pending and potential litigation.
Pending and potential, okay. That being the case, I will entertain a motion to move into executive session for the purposes of discussing potential and pending litigation.
So moved.
All right. It's been moved and properly seconded to move into executive session for the reasons stated. All those in favor? The motion passes unanimously. For those of you that may not have attended these meetings, when we move into executive session, it is a requirement that we ask that everyone leave the BOC room. We will attempt to conduct the business and the conversations with our counsel as promptly as possible, and then invite you back in. So if at this time we could just ask you to leave the BOC room so that we can move into executive session, we greatly appreciate it. I will entertain a motion to come out of executive session.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded to conclude executive session. All those in favor? The motion passes unanimously. Coming out of executive session, is there any further discussion and/or motions? Yes, sir.
Chair, I move that we direct our council to prepare and file a declaratory judgment motion in the home rule map case to ask for a ruling on the constitutionality of the home rule map.
Okay.
Can I just clarify?
Yeah.
Is your motion to
Authorize.
is your motion to authorize council to prepare and file a declaratory judgment action
Yes,
and request for injunctive relief
yes,
against Cobb County and the state, and in relation to the home rule map issue?
yes.
Okay, all right. Just want to make sure I got that down right.
Excellent. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded to authorize council, as just stated, with regard to the preparation and filing of a motion or request for declaratory judgment on the question of constitutionality of the home rule map. All of those in favor? Any opposition? Okay. The motion passes. I'll note it's a vote of 3-2 with Ms. Fisher, myself, and Mr. Bruning voting yes, Ms. Afret and Ms. Mossbacher voting no. That is the final item on the agenda is board member comments. If there are none, does anyone have any comments beyond what we've already provided? Okay. If there are none, we will conclude this meeting, adjourn this meeting at 5:07 p.m. And note that our next meeting at present is a special called meeting on August the 3rd, which will be followed by our board retreat that will take place at the Cobb County Safety Village. The special called meeting beginning at 9 a.m. Thank you all.